So, the interesting thing is that all of these four groups need the internet to operate. If the internet's not working, you can't steal money. If the internet's not working, you can't gain knowledge. So I've been thinking, what if there's a group of people out there, well, I'll point it this way. Hackers and researchers out of these four are the only ones talking publicly about the vulnerabilities. Researchers and hackers discover new classes of vulnerabilities, they explore poor product security, and they also spur public debate. These are things traditionally that governments and companies do not do. And if hackers and researchers can't share the results publicly, then the public as a whole will lose a very important source of knowledge. How can we make informed decisions about what products to buy if there's no independent researchers out there telling us what works and what does not work? And like I said, they all need the internet to work. Nope, wrong way. So when I talk about hackers, what do I mean? Back in 1984, this book was written. That's actually my book from my bookshelf. It's all beaten up. Stephen Levy wrote a book called Hackers, and it chronicled the people in Silicon Valley who invented personal computing. And hackers were people who found a way to make things work, not criminals. Now, here's a popular portrayal of hackers with Angelina Jolie, which I bring this movie poster up because this was the first public website to ever be defaced. It's interesting that the Hackers movie was the first website to be defaced by hackers. And since then, web page defacements are very common. This is how it was defaced. Now I'm going to skip past the old days, and I'm going to talk about current technology. So for example, do you trust your cell phone? I hope everyone here is smart enough to not trust your cell phone. But this is what a cell phone monitoring setup used to look like, done on the cheap. This was an old Oki 900 cell phone, a radio scanner, and a libretto, which was the original netbook. And what it would do is you would put in a phone number of someone you wanted to monitor, and it would record all their conversations. If you hooked up 4 of these phones, you could monitor all the cellular communications in your area. And what criminals would do is they'd take this system and they'd sit outside of, say, Oracle headquarters, and they'd listen to all the Oracle employees they wanted to and learn what people were doing at Oracle. Or they'd sit outside of Wall Street and they'd listen to stock traders. Because when this technology was built, it was not built for privacy or security. And we've lived with that ever since. If this is the software that's used to control the monitoring tool, you notice the first option is called targeting. People use this tool to target individuals and record their conversations. But then GSM came along with this architecture. And if you look at this long enough, what part of this architecture would you attack if you were a criminal? This part of the connection between the cell phone and the tower is encrypted, but it's encrypted very poorly. This is what an A51 real-time decryptor looks like. It's maybe $5,000 to $10,000 now. It's come down in price. And it does the same thing, except today. It decrypts communications on cell phones and allows you to listen into anything. But now in 2010, attackers got even smarter. Now what they do is they just spoof a cell tower, a fake cell tower. And your cell phone associates itself to a fake tower, and then it tells the cell phone, turn off your encryption, I don't support that. Now you don't have to decrypt anything. You just get everything in plain text. And so, at DEF CON in 2010, a hacker demonstrated this in the audience with his own cell phone antennas and about $250 worth of equipment. And he was able to control people's cell phones in the room. This is what a modern one looks like also. This catches all communication coming from a target phone. So my point here is that it's impossible today to communicate securely with your cell phone. The technology does not allow it. You can't do it. So how much business is being lost? how much more business could be done online or on your cell phone if the technology was secure? There's hidden costs here. So you would have to spend money and buy something like this, One Vault. It's an encrypted phone solution, and it's kind of expensive, and everybody who needs to use encrypted voice would have to buy one. This solution does not scale. We should have encrypted communications by default for privacy, but we do not. Well, that's okay. Maybe you trust your satellite phone. Did you trust this guy? So this is the Thoriya satellite phone system. This is its coverage areas. Well, these guys cooked up a Thoriya satellite phone monitoring system also for about $1,000. Looks like this. It's a project, an open source project. Here's another version of it where they have a little bit more capability. And what they can do is, anywhere on 1/3 of the Earth, they can intercept all the communications. So if you're using your satellite phone and you think you're having a private conversation, you're not. Technology does not allow it. Well, maybe you trust your GPS. Here's a GPS jammer designed to go in your car. It costs maybe $20. People are using this to jam GPS trackers and to interfere with maybe police monitoring or a spouse that's trying to track a cheating husband. And here's one that does GPS and GSM. Hides in a pack of a cigarette box, and the plans are free online and you can build it yourself. It's a project. It's really cool, called the Wave Bubble. So maybe your GPS and your GSM is not so reliable now. Here's a commercial one from China. This one blocks pretty much everything. 4G, 3G, digital radio, car trackers. Well, that's okay. We'll put all of our money in the safes. We won't put them online. Well, how safe are safe locks? Right? They look like they've been around since the dawn of time. They've got to be secure, right? This is what the inside of a typical safe lock looks like. Well, a computer security researcher, Matt Blaze, took his computer security mindset and applied it to the physical realm. And if you notice here, it's hard to point at, but let's see if the next slide shows. See right here where the lever nose hits the cam gate? What he did is he mapped out different contact points. And this gave him 6 different stages the lock could ever be in. These are the 6 states the lock could be in at any given time. And once he created these states, he mapped it out on paper. And once you map it out on paper, you can very quickly determine the combination. So maybe your combination lock isn't as safe as you thought, with just a little bit of ingenuity. Well, how about locks with keys? There's a sport called lock sport, in which people pick locks as fast as they possibly can. It's a competition. It started in the Netherlands. Here's a lady participating in a contest. The group that started in the Netherlands was called Tool, on the gentleman's shirt. And you can see they have a wide range of locks, and they teach people how to pick them very quickly. What they're trying to do is expose the weaknesses in the physical security world. But this is another interesting attack. Besides picking a lock, you can take a picture of the key. And students in California devised this system. They took pictures of the key on a table across the courtyard. And then they used a reference key to determine the offsets of all the locations. And then using software, they unwarped the image of the picture of the keys. And then guess what you do? You use a 3D printer and print the key out. This is a 3D printed key. And it works. So now, anybody that takes a picture of your keys can unlock your house. Well, how many people knew that until security researchers started playing around? The company's never going to tell you that. In Europe, there's a key called the Abloy Protect. key, but unfortunately it's very easy to copy with a 3D printer. So as long as nobody can see your key, you're safe. Well, what can you do about that? There's a key manufacturer in Europe called EVA. They make a tool, a box called the MCS, magnetic. And it uses not only a keyway on the side, it has magnetic cylinders that are polarized in a certain configuration. So you can take a picture of this key and it doesn't tell you anything. So if for some reason your keys had to be out invisible, I would use a key like this. But again, how would you know that? How about proximity cards? This proximity card cloner was made in 2003 and it hasn't changed to this day. To protect against proximity card cloners, you need to use an encrypted proximity card system, such as this HID iCloud. This is currently one of the only solutions to protect against proximity card cloning. But again, installers usually install the cheapest product. They don't usually spend an extra few dollars for security. And what I'm trying to say is, once you have an understanding of the security risks, the complexity, you can make a better informed choice on how to protect yourself. This is the Bluetooth sniper gun. It looks like a sniper gun, but it really captures Bluetooth signals. And it set the world record for Bluetooth signal capturing. Back then, the record was about maybe 30 feet. This is one of my favorites. I don't know if they use license plate readers in Moscow to find stolen cars and give you tickets. Look at this guy's license plate. It's a SQL injection database attack, license plate. And what do you think happens when the license plate reader reads this? It dumps information up on the screen there. They successfully attacked the traffic system's database by just putting something really fancy on the license plate. It's great. Problems like this are going to happen. I was talking to some police officers that use a license plate reading system, and I said, how's that work for you? And they said, the problem is, the license plate readers are on all the time, and when they see a chain link fence, you know the chain link fence is an X's, it fills the database with X's. It thinks every chain link fence is a license plate XXXXX. Okay, well, maybe you're interested in crowd control. And you need to use the laser dazzler to stun the eyes of the people in the crowd, to disperse them. So this laser dazzler is like $6,000 or $8,000. But that's okay. You just buy these glasses for $30, and the laser dazzler stops working. How about your email? How many people use PGP to encrypt their email? Very few people. And generally the reason is it's too complex. It's not for the masses. Well, I use PGP, and I put my encryption certificate on a token. I actually used to keep it on one of these, the IP 2032 security token. Now, how many people here trust your security token? Not that many, I hope. This is what happens after Chris Tarnowski gets a hold of my token. He tears it apart, he polishes off the epoxy, and he exposes the die underneath. You can see in the middle that's where he damaged it a little bit when he was exploring. And he gets down to the die. And this is where my unencrypted PGP key lives, right over here on the right, in the 32K EEPROM, which he can then dump. And what he can do is he can copy my PGP key, copy it over to a new undamaged iKey, and swap my old key with the new key, and he'll have a copy. So, you have to have your iKey with you all the time. If you don't, you're vulnerable to this attack. Well, I didn't realize that until Chris took apart my key. Do you trust your SSL for web browsing? Here's the problem. You trust everyone on this list, every intermediate SSL service. And I ask people, well, how many secondary certificates have been signed? How many are out there? How many people do you have have to trust when you browse on the web? And the answer is, who knows? Nobody knows. So the EFF did a survey of the whole internet, and this is what they discovered. This is how many people you trust when you browse online securely. It's over, I think, it was over 600. And the browsers themselves are not helping. Here's an example. Let's say you go to an SSL page, and you're going there with, say, Firefox, and there's mixed mode content. Some of the page is on SSL, and some of the page is not SSL. And it's called mixed mode content. So, what do you think Firefox does? Read this security warning. It says, you've requested an encrypted page that contains some unencrypted information. Information you see on this page could be easily read by a third party. Okay, what are my options? All I can do is say, okay. It's too late, there's nothing I can do. It's sort of like, you've been attacked. Okay. But I never thought I would say this. Internet Explorer does it correctly. Of all people, Microsoft does it correctly. And what they do is they say, only secure content is being displayed. And then you have to decide if you want to show the insecure content, secure by default. And the websites themselves aren't helping. So in 2000, when did I sign this paper? June of 2009, I was part of a group of people that wrote an open letter to Howard Schmidt at Google. Or I'm sorry, Eric Schmidt at Google. It's a different Howard. And we asked them to please turn on SSL by default for everything, because Google can do that. Why wouldn't they? And then Google announced that China attacked them. Look at the date. 2010. Default HTTP access for Gmail was turned on. That was the exact same date that Google announced that they'd been attacked by China. So they didn't have security on until they were attacked. And then they turned on security, and they announced it the same day, and it got buried in all the news about China. And nobody noticed that Gmail had gone secure by default. But sometimes that's what it takes. These are all the plugins I have to run on my Firefox just to try to be secure online. That's ridiculous. Nobody should have to have that many plugins to try to be safe online. It should be safe by default. You shouldn't have to be a security expert to try to browse online. And so sometimes people call me paranoid, but I say I'm just overly cautious. So what can you do about this? There's certain things you can do as network operators, and there's certain things you can do as individuals. But one thing everyone can do, and I talked about this earlier, is you can filter your networks for bad traffic. This helps with denial of service attacks. Filter your networks against IP spoofing. You can help strengthen the DNS by disabling recursive servers. If you run a network, you run a DNS server, please turn off recursion. You can run DNSSEC, and I'll speak about this in a minute. But this not only prevents cache poisoning attacks, but what this does is it's helping build a better future for the internet. DNSSEC will help secure the future by allowing us to run more trusted systems, such as DAME for authenticating TLS certificates. I'll skip that one. And you can also help encrypt the web. If you run a website, please support SSL. Use HSTS, Strict Transport Security. Force everyone who comes to your website to use SSL. SSL doesn't take much time anymore. It's not very CPU intensive. The arguments that SSL is too computationally difficult, I don't believe anymore. I think everyone can run SSL, and you see that with Google and Facebook and Twitter. You can also help reduce email spam by adding an SPF record to your DNS server. This signals to the world where valid email should come from. If I was the emperor of the internet for a day, I would force everybody to run DNSSEC and SPF records and filter IP spoof packets. And that alone would allow us to remove all this noise so we could focus on the actual problem and get rid of some of this background clutter. You can also use DKIM to digitally sign and give attribution to email that's sent. So when you do receive a message, you're absolutely sure where it came from. And I encourage everyone to run an email black hole to help cut down on spam. Spam operates on an economy of scale where anything you can do to make the economics of spam more costly, it washes out a huge amount of the spam. So if you could double the prices, double the cost to spammers, most all of them would go out of business. They don't make enough money. So what I'm talking about here is do things that drive up the cost to the spammers. And finally, I think I have a couple minutes. So here are some of my future concerns. Well, it's not 2011. This is an old slide, I guess. You can't talk securely on your mobile phone. You can't communicate securely with email. You can't even browse securely on the internet. Right? We've been building these technologies for a decade and we can't do the most basic things. And we're moving to cloud very quickly. I want everybody to think about how much more business would you do online if you trusted your email, if you trusted your online banking, if you went to a website and you trusted what you saw on your screen. How much more business would we conduct online? How much more e-government could we do? And so I believe we're just at the beginning of what's possible online, because as we deploy new systems like DNSSEC, IPv6, RPKI, we'll be building this new foundation where we can trust everything. And when that day comes, the amount of innovation in business, people will invent things I've never even thought of. But we in this room will be the ones that help get them there. We would have built this foundation. And so I say, let's please focus on the fundamentals. We're spending billions of dollars on complicated systems, and we haven't fixed the simple things like email, SSL, DNS. Let's get those things right. We're using SSL and TLS that was invented over a decade ago. And it's not just our money at risk anymore. Now it's our liberty. Now people are voting online. It's no longer about pictures of cats on Facebook. It's about people organizing political movements online and people voting. And that's a fundamentally different security challenge. So with that, I thank you very much.